phenomenal followers, friends, and family.
Welcome back to Young Black Married Christian Podcast.
Now listen, I know you fall into one of those categories. You may even fall into some of those categories, but even if you fall into none of those categories, I promise you that over the next few minutes, we're going to give you 4 to 5 tips to fortify the future of your marriage.
Now, we know you're short on time. We know you're short on data, but do us a favor. If you don't have time to go all the way through the podcast, just click the button attached to the podcast and take us with you throughout your day.
So today we are talking about dealing with in-laws, and there is a lot to get into. There's a lot to get into, but we are going to do it for you. This is your host, Lashad and Doriana James, from all the way down in San Antonio, Texas, working hard to make sure your spouse doesn't become one of your exes.
Let's get started.
Doriana, I never like saying it together in sync like that. Is that?
You don't like that?
I don't know. It just sounds
so
weird.
You're so easy.
Can y'all comment? Drop us a DM or something. Does that sound weird saying it both together like that?
Well, I mean, maybe we wouldn't have to say it together if someone who would remember whose turn it is to talk.
Like last time I stole from you? Is that what you?
You stole it.
I stole your line. Before we get started today talking about, some tips on dealing with in-laws, I want to give a special shout out to some of our phenomenal family members who have left us some beautiful
phenomenally
reviews on iTunes.
Woo!
Shout out to MotivatedByBridget. She says this is not only informative, but the natural flow of the conversation makes it easier to listen to. Thank you for that. You're awesome. Shout out to QueensANC. It says so refreshing to hear them speak on relevant topics concerning marriage, and it's inspiring and hopeful. So we really thank you for that. And then a special shout out to one of our listeners, first name Abigail. Not going to give her last name, but first name Abigail. She purchased the Phenomenal Family training course. I know, right? And she has done an amazing job of giving us her feedback and allowing us to reshape the course so that when the rest of you purchase it, it's an even better experience. And so she was one of our founding members, and she's done an amazing job as a founding member of giving us the feedback that we need to personally make the course better. And then we have actually been in contact with her trying to better her marriage personally. So yeah, it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
So now we need to get into the 7 tips to deal with in-laws, or just better, have that relationship with in-laws, because it can be rough.
Yeah.
It can be rough. You get married and all of a sudden people don't want to respect boundaries, and they still try to son you, try to act like, hey, yo, this still my daughter. This still, this still my son. I don't care if y'all married. This still my kid. It's like, whoa. Especially if you came from a background where there's not a whole lot of people getting married.
Yeah.
And so your family is so close knit because all the aunts and uncles, not a lot of them are getting married. And so the strongest bond that they have is grandma, aunts and uncles, cousins, and nuclear, whatever that nuclear family is.
Yeah. Whoever was born and then raised in the family.
Exactly.
And then you get married and you bring in someone who's already a full grown adult, and everyone wants to act like, oh, you should know these things already. But this is a whole new person that you've just pretty much annexed into the family.
Annex? Is that the right word? When you annex somebody into a family? I thought annex.
You should Google it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, keep going. Sorry. Sorry, you're the scholar.
You just try to son me? Me?
Continue.
This is how you treat me?
You get on the podcast, this is how you treat me?
I will not stand for it. No, but yeah, especially you have it's like annexing someone into your family, and there's a whole, when 2 nations come together, there's a whole new treaty that's pretty much made in dealing with relations. So we're going to kind of talk about that in in-laws.
So point number 1, and this is actually the most important one, because all of the little tips that we're going to share with you today are all based on this first tip. And the first tip is that you must work with your spouse. Okay. Yes. So before you start setting boundaries and enforcing boundaries and all that other stuff, you need to work with your spouse. And this is important because in order to deal effectively with in-laws, it starts with working those conflicts out with your spouse, because you don't want, to have an unresolved idea or an unresolved expectation that you're trying to play out in your in-laws family relationship unless you and your spouse have already dealt with that. And it always feels awkward because it's those moments where you're in your in-laws house and maybe your in-law says something that offends you, but you and your spouse haven't talked about yet how to deal with that. So you don't know if you should speak up or if they should speak up. and then you get mad at them because they didn't defend you, and now you're going back home because they didn't handle that relationship, they didn't handle that moment properly, and now you're arguing personally.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, first you have to start with your spouse and say, okay, what are we going to have as our standards? And I think Duran is going to go into more of that, but it has to start with you and your spouse. You can't enforce rules that you and your spouse don't agree on. You can't like actually follow up with anything that you and your spouse haven't already agreed on. So my point here is that you have to have that hard conversation. I mean, you have to be proactive and say, okay, what will we allow and not allow? And so you and your spouse have that united front, and then you're able to move forward from there. So just open up that conversation, however awkward it is, open up that conversation with you and your spouse so that you can actually do step number 2.
Yes. So step number 2 is set boundaries and limits. And this is a perfect place where you can work as a team with your spouse in setting your family values, like your core mission statement. And wow, that's so familiar because I think we talked about that, Lashad.
We did talk about establishing family mission,
my goodness,
and vision
keeps
statements.
coming up.
It does. It's almost like a guiding compass to everything else. If you have not clicked the link in the description of this podcast and downloaded the family mission and vision statement, you played yourself. But yeah, so you're setting.
Wow. Well, since it just came up again so naturally in conversation, we might as well talk about it. So as you have your family values in your mission statement, you can communicate that with your in-laws. You can communicate your new family values, or not even new, but just like for you and your spouse, it is like your own family that you're starting up, and you could communicate those values to your in-laws, and also kind of talk about what you do and don't tolerate. It really comes in handy when you have kids. You could be like, hey, our kids, we really focus on schoolwork. So if they're visiting you, mom and dad, they need to spend at least 30 minutes a day on homework, or, if they're visiting or spending the night. So it's just really presenting your family's rules and what your family lives by, and presenting that to them as this is how you're going to kind of fit into our new family rhythm as well. So yeah, that really just ties also into proactive communication. If you can have these conversations before there's an issue, then it really makes the conversation a lot easier if there ever is an issue. You don't have to just react to it and be like, oh, you should have known. But it's really just setting the stage and setting their expectations for this is how it's going to be in the future. And we can kind of hash it out before there's a problem instead of waiting till there is an issue and then having a more emotional conversation.
Yeah. Are we going to proactively deal with things when they show up, or reactively when they blow up? And we have to make a decision to say, you know what? I think there's some common confusion and common mistakes that people are making that we're going to avoid by proactively setting our boundaries and proactively setting what our core values are, and then just communicating that with our in-laws and saying, hey, this is how we're going to operate. This is how me and my wife are going to operate as a family, or this is how me and my husband are going to operate as a family. So here's an example of that. When me and Doriana first got married, there was times where my mom felt really comfortable kind of talking very loosely about my wife. And she was coming from a place like, yo, it's me and you, mother, son. She's the third party. We're going to talk about her and kind of talk about what we believe in a very loose kind of way. And it got to a point where I started feeling a little convicted, because I was like, if Doriana were here right now and I didn't stick up for her, she would be offended by me indulging in the conversation without putting up these sort of barriers. And so I had to tell my mom, it's like, listen, me and my wife are one. So as you're talking to me, you need to envision that she's with me. So don't say anything to me that you wouldn't say to her. And, respectfully, like make it respectful. And that was a conversation where it was hard. It was actually hard to tell my mom that, because in that moment where she thought like, oh, it's just me and my son, she had to realize like, no, my son is married now. So it's not just me and my son, and we're just going to kind of trash talk this third person who he happens to be in a relationship with. Like, she's not my girlfriend anymore, like that may have been
you trash talked me when I was your girlfriend.
Chill, bro.
Is that what you're saying?
Y'all know. Listen,
I gotta a lie.
Listen, I'll talk to the phenomenal family. I can't talk. Y'all understand what it's like. You dating somebody, and when this, you don't know, they know. Listen, I know them. They know me. They know me. They know, they get me.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, y'all know how it is. You know, when you're dating, it's not that serious. So the relationship between you and your mom and dad is so much stronger than a person you've been dating for 1 month, 2 months, even 1 year or 2 years. But you do cross a line when you get married, and the hierarchy and the relationships between you and them and mom and dad, it all shifts a little bit, and we have to respect that new hierarchy, that new shift. And so, yeah, that was what I had to go through personally. And since then, I never had an issue. She never talked to me in a way that she wouldn't talk to you. Now, that doesn't mean she's not transparent and she's not open, but as far as just like being really loose and rude, she wasn't like that anymore.
Yeah. I think something also important on setting boundaries and limits is once you set them, then LaShaw's going to talk a little bit more about how to properly enforce them.
Yes. And so I had to enforce that boundary, and it was very awkward. And so my encouragement to everyone here listening, I know it's going to be awkward, but you got to have that conversation that enforces the boundaries that you've already set. And so you proactively set these boundaries of saying, listen, this is how me and my family are going to operate. And so, you know, that's our boundary. Please don't cross it or don't, you know, try to violate that boundary that we have. And that's whatever it is. It could be dealing with children. It could be how they talk about your spouse. It could be when they show up at the home, you know, showing up unannounced versus actually announcing themselves. It could be things like money, like asking for money or sharing bank accounts in a weird way where they can, you know, reach into your funds, reach into your family's money and take money out. Maybe that was cool before you got married, but now that you're married, there's new boundaries that have to be set. So here's what I need you to understand about boundaries. Anytime you set a boundary, that boundary will be met with some sort of kickback or pressure during the adjustment period. And so you could think of any new boundary that you set, like potentially, what's a good boundary that people set that people bump into? Like, okay, maybe the boundary that separates the kitchen from, you know, where the dogs are. And it's like that little gate that you put up. Yeah. Okay. You don't expect the dogs not to touch it or bump up against it. When there's that adjustment period where they're learning, I cannot go past this, there's going to be some kickback. There's going to be a little bit of pressure put on that boundary, or even the guardrail as you're driving, right? That guardrail is put up for safety reasons, right? But every once in a while, a car may actually bump into it, and there's that pressure, there's that kickback. But the thing is, the boundary has to be enforced, because if not, there's danger on the other side. And we don't want our relationships to go into a place where there's no boundaries and people are falling off into danger. So expect the kickback, expect the pressure during that period of adjustment, but be sure to enforce those boundaries and those limits.
Yeah. And I think something LaShaw's saying that's really key is there is a time, like there's a discussion that you can have with your own parents as far as setting the boundaries that are going to be set with your new family. And sometimes I know when we first get married, whenever we go over to the in-laws house or go over to the family's house, it's always like, okay, you know, me and my spouse are going together to our family's house. But what LaShaw had to do is pretty much go sometimes have that time with just him and his mom to kind of set the boundary and set the groundwork for what our family going forward was going to look like. So I didn't go with him each and every time back home. And the same thing, you know, sometimes I would just visit my parents for a week. So not only did they get to just spend time with their daughter and hang out with me again, instead of just me and, you know, our new son-in-law who we don't really know, but we kind of wish we could just hang with our daughter again. We might feel a little lonely. We might miss her. However, but he allowed that boundary and that limit to be, okay, we will be coming over together, but it doesn't mean that you'll never be alone with her again or never be able to hang out with her again the way that you used to.
And I think that's important during that adjustment period, that when you first get married, yes, you're tempted to always be with your spouse because you guys just got married, you know, you're having sex now, you know, you're enjoying each other. So you guys just want to be around each other all the time. And you think other people also enjoy you two being together all the time. That's like a little assumption that you're making. Like, I love my husband loves me, and you should love us both together. Yeah, that's true. But it would be nice to see you alone a few times. And again, this doesn't have to be something that's permanent, but during that adjustment period, it is good to have some time to say, you know what, baby, I'm going to send you to your mother's house and your father's house without me, because I know that this is a gift that I'm giving to them, to have you to them for a little while. Yeah. And we're still together. We're still a unit, but I'm letting them kind of have
like a day
that
with you.
that day with you. So that's a little tip right there. Please go visit your parents without your spouse every once in a while. And it's not like you two aren't together or you two are fighting or anything like that. It's really that kind of a gift that you're giving of that personal intimacy without the physical presence of your spouse there.
Or even if you guys do go on a trip together, it's always, sometimes LaShawn and I, when we hang out with my parents, he'll send my dad and me out for breakfast. Like, if he won't come along, we'll just go out, and just so we can have that one-on-one time, so my dad can kind of check in with me, and I can, just reminisce with him without being like, okay, there's someone else here that we have to consider being part of the conversation, just so he can hang out with me like we used to do. And same thing, whenever I would visit LaShawn with his mom, just send him out with his mom, or able to send him out with his mom without me being there, so she could talk to her son candidly like she used to, because it is an adjustment period that we got to hang out. LaShawn and I, we've been together for a while, so I got to know him. I got to hang out with him for a very long time consistently.
Yeah.
But I have to realize my parents didn't know him like that. And they didn't get to be with him, and they didn't choose to be with him this whole time. So they have to get to know him and build their own relationship and friendship. And I can't force them to do that immediately.
Yeah. And while Doriana gets the next point ready, I want to give you guys this little challenge, I guess. Don't just consume this podcast. We need to do something with it. So if you're walking, or if you have the ability to text your spouse, this is a perfect time to say, you know what, babe, I think it's time for you to go see your parents without me this weekend. Or I think it's time for you to go see grandma or granddad without me tomorrow. Or I think it's time for you to call your brothers, sisters, or cousins immediately. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. You will get blamed for the lack of communication between your spouse and their family members. It will always be they got married and got brand new, and now they changed up, and you're going to get the blame of that, because they're not going to blame their loved ones. They're going to blame you for changing their loved one.
Yeah.
And that's a very common theme. So in order to avoid some of that, you won't avoid all of it, I'll be 100% honest. But in order to avoid some of that, you need to make sure that, after the honeymoon and you guys are still kind of getting your life together, that you section out time to say, babe, I need you to call your mom today. I need you to go visit your brother today. I need you to call your cousin or text them back or go visit them now without me. And I need you to spend about 15 or 30 minutes with them alone and give them some quality time, because they might not be feeling the love right now, and they're probably afraid that you're going to change. They're probably afraid that you're going to pull away from their relationship. But I need you to lean in this moment so that they know that you're not going anywhere. So get your phone out, text Bay, give them that piece of advice, see what they think about it, maybe forward this podcast to them and tell them to start listening at a certain period so that they can start to, ingest some of these ideas, because I think it's really helpful that the spouses are both consuming this type of content and kind of getting these ideas. Even if you don't agree with them, it's just great to wrestle with the ideas together. So there you go. Yeah. Point number 4, communicate directly.
Yes. So we want to make sure that this is for the in-laws with the in-laws with the in-laws. I don't know how to say that, but as far as me with my in-laws, or you with your in-laws, you want to make sure that you are communicating with them, not through like a third party, or be like, hey, make sure, LaShawn, make sure to tell your mom that I didn't like what she did this and this.
Oh yeah, like, Doriana, can you please tell your dad not to do that again?
Yeah, something like that. You want to make sure that as you're growing in this family, that you're communicating with your in-laws with things that you do like, don't like, do appreciate, didn't appreciate. You don't want to always have to go through a third party.
Yeah.
I know for LaShawn and myself, there are a lot of opportunities that I had to kind of step up and talk to his mom and be like, hey, Miss James, when you did this, like, I just want to make sure we're on the same page about
that. It was low key disrespectful. No, don't say that, guys.
No, don't be like that. But I mean, I know I missed a couple opportunities to step up and really present myself as LaShawn's partner and LaShawn's wife, and an equal kind of partner in the relationship. I missed some of those opportunities to step up and state my opinion. And I would deliver the message. Either I would deliver the message through him, or I would just be like, okay, never mind, and I wouldn't express it at all. And I'd be like, okay, well, I just won't go over, like, you can hang out with her, but I mean, I probably just won't do anything because I don't feel like we're on the same page. And I know I missed an opportunity in doing that. And it's always better if I can communicate directly and freely with LaShaw's family, and they understand like she is a capable equal part in getting that communication through. Honestly, I think I sometimes get some messages from LaShaw's side of his family because they know I probably will answer my phone more.
That is true. But here's the important part. You know, if that relationship between you and your in-laws is going to thrive, there has to be a good system of conflict resolution. It can't just be you being too nice and overly agreeing with everything and never disagreeing or stating what you believe is a like different opinion on something. They've been to your wedding, okay? They have had dinner with you. You've done a little double date thing. You've been over their house. They've cooked you meals. You slept in their house. I mean, so you guys are married or you're on your way to be married. So there's enough of relationship there that you can lean in and say that you disagree with something without it destroying the entire relationship. Yeah. They should know enough about you and they should like you enough that if you were to bring something to them and say, you know what, when you said this, I didn't quite understand what you were saying, and I interpreted it this way, and it made me feel kind of bad. Do you mind if we talk about this? It's not going to destroy the entire relationship, and actually, it's going to make it more authentic. Yeah, and it's actually going to make it more solid. Yeah. So yeah, there might be a little bit of tension there, but the conflict resolution that you're using is actually going to be helpful for the marriage. So it's not good to just bear your emotions and not talk about something if something's offending you, and it's not good to try to use your spouse as that, you know, third party all the time as the person delivering the message, because then it just
like, can you please tell your mother?
Okay. And then can you tell your wife that when, you know, it doesn't, that's not healthy. So, you know, if we can have that communication directly, you know, and it's respectful and it's honoring, and yeah, there may be a little bit of awkward tension there, but if we can get past the awkward tension, we can actually solidify the relationship a little bit better.
Yeah. And we're learning conflict management in our marriages, you know, how to have effective communication and kind of get through those tough conversations, and that proactive communication versus reactive communication.
Where have I heard that at?
That sounds so familiar.
So eerily familiar. Like it's almost, I think it's in our online training course, Phenomenal Fighting, How to Navigate Through Tough Conversations. I think it is in there. We talk about proactive communication. We talk about reactive communication.
Man, almost verbatim.
Yeah. It's I mean, well, and here's the thing. I think a lot of people who are listening right now, they're probably wondering, like, why did we come up with the course? This course is literally everything that we could put together on the topic that can really serve as something foundational and a good teaching for your marriage. And so it's not like we're not plugging any of this stuff into like our teachings with you. As we're going through our resources, it keeps popping up that having good proactive communication and good reactive communication is very important for your marriage. And so we put that course together for you. If you want to be a founding member, go check it out. Links in the bio, but let's keep going. Number 5. So we talked about number 4, communicating directly. Number 5, you need to know yourself. This one's important. Do not try to be the in-law that your spouse wants you to, or that your in-laws want you to be. So don't try to be the son-in-law that your father-in-law wants you to be. You know, your father-in-law may say, I always wanted a son that was good at sports and would go fishing with me and all this other stuff. If that's not you, that's not you. And you know, you guys are just gonna have to kind of work together and live together, and it's not that you can't experience those things or try those things, but like if you're not a golfer, don't golf. Like it's okay, you know. Whatever you know, help expose your father-in-law to that. And so this kind of goes back to the idea of being fully known and fully loved. You know, you cannot be, you know, half known and fully loved because they're loving someone that's not really real. And that's a whole lot of energy to keep up those type of appearances. Like, you know, I'm not a golfer. Me being out there on the golf course and not really wanting to be out there to practice, but I just want to impress my father-in-law. Like that's whack. You know, if I do it, it's going to be something that's kind of a gift and a bonding moment, but I'm not going to try to morph myself into this type of son-in-law that they envisioned or that they dreamed of just so I can get to know them and try to win a relationship with them. It's not a good strategy. It's very tiring.
It's not sustainable.
And it's not sustainable. So just don't do it.
Eventually they're going to find out you're not good at golf, LaShawn.
They're going to find out. They're going to find out. Number 6, you need to honor the relationship between your spouse and your in-laws.
Yes.
Okay. So this is difficult because sometimes when my wife comes to me and complains about something her mom did, I start talking very loosely about her mom as if her mom is this like third party, like her boss or something, where like somebody that we don't outside the family.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where she's like, wait a minute, she's still my mom. Watch your mouth. You know, like that's still my dad. Watch your mouth. And for you, it's gonna, for you and your spouse, just gonna listen. That's still my cousin. You know, don't get that loose. You know, you don't have to agree.
Family.
Yeah, that's still family. So you kind of got to curb how you talk about them. And so again, just don't disrespect that relationship. If anything, try to support that relationship. Again, tell your spouse, call your cousin, call your mom, call your grandma, you know, support that in any way that you can. And even when your spouse may be talking negatively about their family, you need to probably be the balancing positive voice in that moment. Like, don't agree with them. Just be like, hey, I believe that they meant the best, or I believe they're trying really hard,
or if you don't have it, or you could just listen, you know,
or you could just listen,
or you could be like, oh dang, babe, that's crazy. She did that. Oh, wow. You know,
well, how are you doing? How are you going to respond? You know, like,
what did you say?
What did you say? Yeah. Yeah. How can we apply one of our family core values to this scenario? So number 7 is one of my personal favorites. Okay. And this one, it's going to be really hard for me to communicate, but I believe there's a small portion of you out there who will get this. And this one says, you know, number 7, don't fumble the inheritance. I played football, so please excuse this analogy, but you know, when there's a running play, the quarterback has to hand the ball off to the running back. And during that exchange, there's a high likelihood that it could be fumbled just because you know, during the handoff, there's a lot of motion going on. There's a lot of things people are trying to do. And so with that, you don't want to fumble the exchange. You got to secure the exchange before you start running. I believe that getting an inheritance from your in-laws, that's an exchange. There's an exchange of knowledge. There's an exchange of financial resources. There's an exchange of real estate. There's an exchange of family heirlooms and values. And there's a whole lot that has to be handed from one generation to the next. Don't fumble that by not properly respecting the relationship you have with your in-laws.
Yes.
So, for example, me and my father-in-law opened up a small business 16 months ago. It's a tutoring company, and it slowly became the best tutoring company in San Antonio. And that's all because we were able to work together enough to accomplish something bigger than ourselves. And that was us not fumbling the inheritance. Like, he could have just sat on his money until, you know, he passed away and then just wrote it to us in his will. But instead he said, you know what, while I'm in the land of the living, I want to give you something that can potentially bless you and my daughter and potentially my grandchildren. And so my encouragement to you all is, please don't fumble the inheritance. Whatever your in-laws have for your marriage and your family, you need to make sure that the relationship is strong enough and is there so that they can give it to you. We don't need to be part of a family that just leaves everything in a will. You know, we should let our in-laws experience the fruitfulness of their labor and our labor together while they're alive, not when they've just passed away.
For sure. And just really capitalizing on what your parents left for you. I know with my family, LaShawn and I are blessed enough, like with my parents, where we're able to actually, they're able to run that business together. You know, in the future, we're able to kind of live in close proximity, if not in the same place together. So we're really kind of like dynasty, like trying to build like an empire.
Big facts.
You know, so we're able to really capitalize off of my father's hard work that he's invested in us. And of course, LaShawn is learning how to, like he's saying, not to fumble that by being responsible, making sure he's making good decisions, by understanding that my parents are investing in us what we would not be able to have by ourselves. Like, we were not able to produce what my parents are successfully handing off. And that's because we've kind of proven that we are responsible enough to handle money and not spend it on things that aren't responsible. We're
prodigal son living.
Yeah, not prodigal son. We're not out here prodigal son living, and we're actually taking steps, you know, getting financial peace and really trying to be smart with our money, really trying to budget, really trying to not show out in our marriage. It kind of be a safe place where they know that they're doing the right thing. You know, we're going to church and involved in church and trying to be exactly who we need to be so that they know that we can be trustworthy with the money, the inheritance, you know, and not spend it on riotous living.
So I want to go through the 7 tips we gave one more time and give you some action steps to go along with them. Number 1, work with your spouse. So if you have not sat down and talked about specifically how you want to handle in-laws with your spouse, this is number 1. I don't know how we're going to start the conversation. Maybe you say, hey, baby, I just wanted to talk about our in-laws and see if we can strategize together to have the best plan of action going forward, something that we're both comfortable with, that we can present to them when we need to, or, as soon as we need to.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the first action step that you need to take to better your marriage. Our second tip was that you need to set boundaries and limits. And so for some of you, this is the awkward time where you have to say to mom, dad, cousin, uncle, whatever it is, that I'm married now. Sometimes you got to remind people, look, I'm married now. And that doesn't mean I'm changing how I feel about you. And it doesn't mean I'm changing our relationship together, but it does mean that I can't allow you to do X, Y, and Z. Or that this is the new way that we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And you just got to say it. You have to put it out there. You can't just try to manage it without first laying it out there. You just got to say it.
I said it. I just said it.
I said what I said.
I said it. What is frustration?
Frustration is nothing but unmet expectation. Frustration is nothing but unmet expectation.
So what happens if we set expectation?
If you set expectation, then frustration is managed.
Yeah.
That teaching came straight out of the training course. And you could have had that already if you purchased the course. We're not going to go there. Number 3, enforce the boundaries and the limits. Okay, it's not enough just to say that I'm setting a boundary. You have to enforce it. So for some of you, maybe you already told your mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother, or whatever your in-laws, maybe you've already set the boundary, but you've been really lax in enforcing it. You have not gone back and said, hey, remember we talked about this. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
You're breaking my heart.
You definitely have to notice the difference between a traffic cone and like a cement barrier in the street.
Exactly. Traffic cones are like suggestions.
Yeah. If you hit it, it'll move.
Yeah. I know. My car is going to, just scoot that out of the way and slide on it. Yeah. And so we got to set boundaries, not just these dotted lines in the sand, but like clear boundaries to say, listen, we cannot do this. This is not acceptable anymore. And then you have to enforce them. Yes. Number 4, communicate directly. So for some of you, you just need to lean into that relationship with you and your in-laws and communicate directly something that might be offending you. And you can pick and choose your battles. It doesn't have to be every single thing that makes you mad. It could just be one quick thing that's like, hey, you said that and I didn't quite understand. Yes, it's going to be awkward, but I promise you, your relationship is going to be so much more rich and full when you know that you all can disagree and then come to an agreement on something.
Yeah.
Number 5, know yourself. Listen, don't be fake, guys. If there's something that you're trying to do or there's an expectation that your in-laws have of you that's not real, just go ahead and reset those expectations so that they're not being frustrated and say, hey, I am not, a golfer, or I'm not going to have kids in 5 minutes or 5 years, or 5 months.
Or maybe I'm not going to cook brownies and sweets every day for every time you come over or something.
Exactly. I don't know what idea you had of an in-law, but that's not it for me. And so let's go ahead and reset your expectations so I can manage your frustrations. I'm going to keep saying it till they get it in their spirit, man. I swear. All right. Number 6, family, you need to honor the relationship between you and your spouse. So listen, this isn't really an action step that you can take right now, but the next time you feel like you're going to make a comment about your spouse's family that might be negative, please just reverse it and just respect that relationship. No matter how upset your spouse is, honor their mom, honor that relationship. And number 7, do not fumble the inheritance. And so for this action step, just look at, what your mother-in-law, father-in-law, cousins and brothers are trying to do and see if there is something there that you can tap into and say, what, as a family, we can partner with that. We can agree with that. We can work towards that. And whatever the goal is, if it fits into your family core value and mission statements, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Whew, man, that was a lot.
Yeah. That's a lot.
That was a lot. Listen, we promised you that over the last few minutes, we give you at least 4 to 5 tips to fortify the future of your marriage. And Doriana, I think we did just that.
We gave about 7.
We gave about 7. Yeah. Listen, don't just consume this content for free. Please, if you enjoyed any of it, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Don't be selfish, with the knowledge. And if you think your spouse needs to get on it, put it on their phone, say, hey, tune into this podcast. If you're looking for a way to say thank you, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or an honest review. If it's negative, email us. If it's positive, go ahead and drop it on there. No, seriously, those reviews go a very, very, very long way. And also pray for us. We have a couple of big interviews coming up and, we want to make sure we're honoring them as well. So this is all to serve you. Listen, I know that we say this all the time, but we really do. We love you. We're trying to better your marriage. We want you to be successful. We want your marriage to thrive. We want you and your spouse to be like relationship goal status. I want to scroll through Instagram and see you trending #1 on relationship goals with you and Bae. That's what I want. That's what I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're here for you. And so just be in prayer. Leave us that review. And if you're interested in being a founding member of our course, click below. We got you. If you want to learn how to make those family mission and vision statements, click below. We got you. If you want to join the Phenomenal Family Inner Circle.
Phenomenally.
It's not phenomenally. Click below. We got you. But until next time, we love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.